We travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
This thing was ginormous. Holy cow, this guy and gal definitely had some major travel retirement dreams that they were trying to live out. My buddy John and I were coming across Boston Harbor, this is about a month ago now, in this little putsy water taxi after visiting the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned vessel in the U.S. Navy, I think maybe in the world, just FYI. And as we're coming across on this little putsy water taxi, we're looking at all the yachts in Boston Harbor. I mean, it's a pretty rich place, so there's some pretty nice yachts there. Lord knows how much they cost. But there was one yacht that just literally dwarfed all the other yachts in the harbor. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people that spend a lot of money on their boats had some yacht envy looking at this sucker. This thing had 6 different decks. It had a helicopter on top. And it was ginormous. So it had the name on the side. It was the Vava 2. So I get out my smartphone and I Google it because that's what you do nowadays. And this thing is owned by this billionaire in Italy who married a lady from England. It's 318 feet long. Now, to give you some perspective, a football field from end zone to end zone is about 360 feet long. So this thing was almost as long as a football field. They had a helicopter. It demands a crew of 34 people. So can you imagine on your retirement trip that you need to have a crew of 34 people just to keep the thing moving? It's not quite solitude, I guess. In 2012, when the Vava 2 was built in England, it cost $150 million. So that's quite an aspiration to have for your retirement dreams. And to fill up the tank. So, you talk to people who fill up their RV tanks, and that cost a couple $100. To fill up the tank of the Vava 2 is $400,000. Those are some serious retirement travel dream requirements. Most clients I work with have much more modest dreams. I know one couple that retired and they are off on a multi-month RV trip across America. They left 1 week after retiring. I told them to send me, as an aside, just those random weird things like the giant ball of string and things like that you see on the side of the road. So far, they sent me like this huge lobster on the side of the road. So I'm guessing they were out east somewhere. Another couple I know, when they retired, they are on a mission to visit one national park in each state of the country. That's a pretty cool one. Another couple I know is planning on every other year paying for the entire family to go to some location. So they're paying for the kids and the grandkids. Bring them all together for a week just to create memories. In fact, my buddy John, who I was on the water taxi with, he and his wife are cyclists. And John and I get to go cycling a lot. And he and his wife are intentionally working towards hosting bicycle tours because they love to cycle and they love to talk with people and share. So they're working on all the things they need to do because that's their retirement travel dream. Regardless of what your dream is, whether it's owning the Vava 2 or hosting cycling trips, it's going to cost some money. So we're going to get into a creative way of how you might be able to fund that retirement dream. But not before this week's disclaimer. Time for that all-important disclaimer, and it's the same as it is every week. Don't take advice from me on the show. I don't know anything about you. I only work with clients as a fiduciary, and you're not a client, so I don't work for you. Before you make any decisions, talk to your travel agent, your financial advisor, your legal advisor, or your tax advisor, because that's just common sense, and consider this helpful hints and education. Now let's get on to how we pay for these retirement travel dreams. Well, in the news today, the sharing economy is continuing to pick up steam, and that may help you fund your retirement travel goals. Pretty cool, right? So what is this sharing economy? Let's make sure we're on the same page there. It's an economic system in which assets or services are shared between private individuals for a fee. So the easy example that many of us have probably used is Uber. Uber is a perfect example of the sharing economy. On one end, you got you standing on the side of the road needing to get someplace, maybe from the airport to the hotel or somewhere around town. And on the other end of the transaction, you got a guy or gal with a vehicle and some extra time looking to make money. Via technology, Uber has connected these two private individuals to allow you to get a ride very quickly and fairly inexpensively and very easily. So you get what you want, right? The person that has the car with the time and the inclination to make money is able to make their car and their time very productive in a very flexible way. That is a perfect example of the sharing economy. And it's a great thing to do when you travel. I use Uber all the time when I'm trying to get someplace. Now, in terms of the funding the retirement travel, when we talk about that, how might the sharing economy be able to help you on that desire? When you're ready to travel, normally what would you do? You would have someone take care of your house and watch your house, and then you would go online and use points, or you would go reserve a hotel or maybe a bed and breakfast somewhere that you want to go. Well, just over the last 5 or 6 years, a sharing economy company has just ballooned to become the second most valuable booker of rooms in the entire world. And that company is called Airbnb, Airbnb. And it's an online community marketplace that connects people looking to rent out their private homes with people who are looking for accommodations. So if you're going to say go to Europe, you could rent a hotel, right? And pay the hotel and all the tax and have that experience. Or you could literally rent someone's home who is not going to be there. And then on the flip side, you could rent out your house while you're gone and earn money with someone who happens to be in your neighborhood that wants to find a place to stay. Not a bad way of monetizing your home as an asset to help fund your travel dreams. And in fact, in our next segment, the practical planning segment, we're going to talk to a friend of mine who I got to connect with at Podcast Movement, he's younger, but he has 4 children, and he and his wife do this all the time, and it's really helped fund their travel dreams. And he'll talk a little bit about the ins and outs of Airbnb. This is how big this is. There are over 3 million listings on the Airbnb community of people looking to rent out their homes in 65,000 different cities. In fact, there's only one chain of room availability larger than Airbnb by value, and that's Marriott Properties. So just recently, Airbnb was valued at $31 billion because they've created this network to allow people to connect, to monetize their home if they want to rent it out, or to find a unique experience all across the world. Now, this definitely is not for everybody. It is for some people, but it could be a solution to, one, find a unique experience in a place that you want to go. My wife and I have used Airbnb in other locations, and it creates a more intimate experience rather than the sterilized hotel. But also, and we have not done this yet, it can help fund your travel dreams by monetizing and making money on your home, potentially, to help fund those crazy dreams. Maybe you can make enough to lease out the Vava 2. I never checked if that was on the listing. We'll have to look. But let's get to the practical planning segment so we can learn more about this. Hey, let's be honest. Retirement planning, as it's done, It's broken. It's a one-dimensional solution that worked for your parents, but it doesn't really instill a lot of confidence and empowerment for you because you're going to be living a lot longer, you're going to be a lot healthier, and you're going to be a lot more active than any generation in history after the age of 60. It's time for a new approach, one that's more agile and more multidimensional to really become creative in thinking of solutions to help you live the life that you want. If you want to learn a process that I've developed over 25 years, go to the 5minuteretirementmakeover.com and you can watch a 3-video series for free to show you a new, more agile way to work towards the retirement that you want. So last week I was at Podcast Movement, which is the geeky podcast fest where people like me come together to hone our craft to try to help you enjoy the show a little bit more. And while I was there, I connected with a good friend of mine, Jamie. He and his wife are a wonderful couple. They're in their 30s, and they've become very creative in how they provide for the travel for them, the two of them, and their 4 kids. So I was able to record a podcast right at Podcast Movement. And I want to give a thanks to Shure for providing the microphones for live podcast recording at the conference. And a thank you to TalkShoe for sponsoring this live recording of the Retirement Answer Man. Pretty cool stuff. So we're going to have a conversation with Jamie, and he's going to share his experience, how he has used Airbnb and other services to travel to amazing places, but also to help pay for it through how they rent out their house. So Jamie, the reason I had you on the show is that recently you were texting me a series of photos with these amazing views, and it was annoying the heck out of me. And it was because you spent 25 days in Mexico. So talk about where you went and what that experience was like.
Yes. So we flew into Mexico City, and then it was like a 3.5-hour bus ride from Mexico City. Next time we're going to get picked up at the airport by a shuttle. It was in the mountains, high elevation, about the same height as Denver. So we were leaving Nashville where it was like 95 degrees, and it was like a high of like 78 with low humidity. It was pretty awesome.
And you stayed there for 25 days, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the house like? You mentioned previously that there was a big wall when you drive up, but talk about the house.
So the house was awesome. It was about 2,200 square feet. It only had 2 bedrooms, but they were huge. And we have 4 kids, and so there were 2 queen beds in one room, and then I had 2 full baths with just humongous bathtubs. And so our kids took these awesome baths together, just like almost like a little mini hot tub.
And then what did you do for 25 days in Mexico?
So I have a couple different businesses, and a few of them are completely location independent. And so I have some coaching clients. My wife has coaching clients, and she works for a virtual school. And so my main business right now is an Amazon business, and I do have physical products. So I wasn't able to physically handle my product, but I was working with my virtual assistant. We were buying things online for that business.
Okay, so you were working, and then you had the kids in Spanish immersion for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
and it was somewhat vacation because you showed me pictures and all the plazas you went to and things like that. So,
and you remember me calling you up, kind of telling you my vision for doing this once or twice a year. We definitely kind of stretched ourselves because we had never left our home base here in Nashville for that long.
That's a long time, 25 days. Now, how much does that cost to rent a house in the mountains for 25 days?
Well, I was telling you that it was $1,800, but I think $1,800 was for 15 days. And then we spent a couple of days in Mexico City to visit friends on the way back home from Nashville.
Okay. So we'll say about $2,000 was the rental for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everything else was a lot cheaper down there. If you had to factor in airfare and everything else, how much do you think that trip cost you?
Well, with airfare, we use frequent flyer points, but I think the airfare would have probably been about $400 for each of us. As far as just like being there on site, the language school was like an expense that most people wouldn't do. And again, there's a lot of different options for that as well. I think if we'd go there for longer time, we wouldn't spend that much on, but we spent $1,500 on the language school for 3 weeks for all 4 kids.
Now, do you think if you had stayed in a hotel or something not quite like you did, do you think you'd have had the same experience?
No, I think all the amenities of a home. It really felt like we were kind of living there as opposed to being tourist. I mean, we kind of plugged into a regular kind of routine of, still going out at night and having a good time, but also kind of living life, go to the grocery store and take a taxi back and make breakfast at home. And, you can't do that kind of thing in a hotel.
Yeah, especially with 4 kids. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
It'd be a lot crazier.
Yeah, with traveling with kids, renting a house is awesome. And I know probably like a lot of your audience, if you want to do some work, it's really nice to have different locations where you can kind of, pull out the laptop and sit around. And the house that we had was great for that. Like we had 4 different balconies and just it had an office too, which I lead a group of guys in a mastermind group, and I got to do it there. It was really fun.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the other end. So you funded this vacation through renting out your home.
Yeah, and we actually, with all the expenses that we did, we only spent a couple $100 on the whole vacation. And that includes the airfare and the kids' school, the $1,500.
Okay. So you rented out that house for 25 days for, we'll call it $2,000. How long did you rent your house out for?
Okay, we rented our house out for almost a month that we were gone. We had 2 different sets of people, 2 parties of individuals that rented our house. And one of the people that rented our house were there for a week, and we got $3,000 for the 1 week. And then the other people were there for 4 or 5 days, and that was like another $2,300. Yeah, those prices are after paying professional cleaners to come in and do the cleaning.
Okay, so you basically funded your vacation through taking, and you have a nice house. I've slept there. And it's not a mansion. It's not, it's a beautiful home, but it's not some huge extravagant thing. It's probably equivalent to where you stayed at. So is that a normal kind of rental to be able to demand that kind of prices, or does it vary?
Yeah, for us it is. So our primary residence, we only rent it out maybe a half a dozen or 10 times a year if we're really adventurous. And so it's one of those things where we're not trying to necessarily use it as like a income generating tool. It's more just pays for our trips. And so, we can rent it out very easily over a holiday because there's a lot of people that we're not exactly in a tourist area, but there's enough people coming here that we get people that are interested.
Okay. Now, my wife, I'm open to this kind of idea. She is not real thrilled about the idea of having someone in her home when she's not there. So how do you manage that?
Well, it's definitely a process. And, looking back, we've done this for 2.5 years. I never would have imagined that we would be doing what we did, like the last trip that we took. And so I would say you start small, kind of acclimate to the idea of doing it. And then, maybe you do it like one time. And the goal for the first time would do it, if I was coaching myself, if I could go back in time and talk to myself and I was apprehensive, I would say, don't try to like make a bunch of money the first couple of times you do it. I would say, just try to make it work so that you can do it again, if this is like a long-term kind of thing that you want to do.
So how do you prepare a house, your own house, to have somebody else invade it while you're not there?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to explain that would be, think about if you bought a second home like my uncle owns a house in North Carolina, and specifically he bought it so that he could go there for a vacation rental, and he could also rent it out for income. And so you start thinking like, where are places that you already have in your house that you could put a lock on a closet door and just put all your stuff that you wouldn't want? If you were having like your friend come over to stay with you for a week with some kids, like you'd want to like put your $2,000 guitar away in a closet.
Your guitars.
Or if you had guns or something like that, right?
You obviously clean out the valuables, right? And you have a place where you can, store those. But what about things like dishes and towels and sheets? And that's sort of gross, right? And have somebody sleeping on your sheets?
We bought extra linens and towels and stuff like that. But as far as the kitchen utensils, I think people would be really surprised about how people take care of their house. Like I laugh sometimes, but I have people tell me like, I can't believe you rent out your house. And like, don't people trash your house? And like, it's always funny. It's like, we have 4 kids. So like our house gets trashed when we're here. And then when we're gone, people take better care of our house because they're thinking like, this is somebody's house. I want to be careful with their wine glasses or something, So how do you vet who is going to stay in your house, right? You don't want the bachelor or the bachelorette party to come stay in your house while you're out of town. I think there's like a dynamic, the way you write your copy for your listing, and you want the people to know that you love hosting people and making your home available, but this isn't a place for parties and events. And another thing is you can position yourself to kind of weed out people that are just going to come in and trash it. Like a bunch of college kids won't rent a house for, $500 a night. Like they're they don't want a place where the landlord has all these rules and is going to be a little bit more hands-on. Like they're looking for, no offense if you're a college student, but that was me when I was a college student. So all the good college students listening, I'm not talking about you.
Good cover there. So you position it in the copy and when you put it on the sites where it's VRBO or Airbnb. And then in terms of getting top dollar, what are some tips if you're going to list your house to position your house? Obviously the copy and how you describe it, but what else can you do?
Yeah, I think the quality of your pictures are really important to take high quality pictures. Like the old adage of a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's like if you show people the physical space and turn on all the lights and open up the windows, like draw the curtains back, like don't show pictures of like dark shadows and corners. And like I actually spent some money having professional pictures taken. And I think some of the platforms like Airbnb, we list ours on VBRO, which is another platform. So Airbnb, I think depending on your market, they'll actually send out somebody to take pictures for you. And I live here in Music City, and I have a friend who did some videos, and he connected me with a guy who did videos for him that does country music videos. Like he's done videos for Eric Church and some other country singers. And so like this guy came to my house, took professional pictures, and actually made a video too that I could put on there.
And did you rent a drone or something?
Yeah, he came up with a drone and took some pictures flying through the backyard and put some nice little music in there. And it makes people feel like all warm and tingly. And they're like, I want the house that has like the backyard with the bushes flopping in the breeze or whatever. So.
And I imagine just by doing those types of things too, it makes it presentable in that, again, the college student or the partier isn't going to respond to that to where somebody is looking for a home. Somebody that's a little bit more respectful probably would.
Yeah. And I think a big thing with that too is kind of realizing that once you have more experience doing this, you'll kind of know how to vet people better. So for a long time, I'm still actually doing it most of the time, but I'll get on the phone with somebody like a couple of weeks before they rent my house, and I'll just tell them some things about, like, hey, I just wanted to connect with you so that you feel comfortable. If there's any problem, you can contact me directly. The Wi-Fi password is the same as my cell phone and things like that. And then we have a code on the door, which is another thing. Like we have a lockbox, not a lockbox, but like a code. And so I can give the person, like people want to know like where they're going to go to pick up the keys or if I'm going to meet them here. And I'll tell them like, hey, like, well, let's text like a couple days before you're here and I'll give you the code so you can just come in.
And then all these services like Airbnb and VRBO, they all have a group rating system, right? It's sort of like Uber that way. They get to rate you and you get to rate them, and you build a reputation as you do it over time, right?
Yeah. And that's another way, like you asked about positioning, how to get top dollar. I think you got to ask yourself, are you in the business? Can you be comfortable in the business of hosting and being because you're in the hospitality business if you're going to open up your place. So some people are just more wired, like you were saying, like you're really open to it, and Shauna's not there yet. Some people just love hosting people in their house, and other people they need to kind of gear up for it.
Well, it's a little awkward. I mean, especially old. I'm 50, and my generation older. It's an unusual thing to rent out your house. It was not around really, decades ago when we were young and fun like you. Yeah,
there's definitely like a price to be paid by doing that. I know it might be worth it for some of the people that are listening. And another thing I just turned 40, and my wife and I, we talk about, this is really opening up the possibilities of us thinking about having a second home. Because, I mean, think of it this way, like unless you're financially independent with a lot of money, if you buy a home like near a lake or in like a destination that you love to go to with your family, it's like you're probably going to want to rent that house out to pay for itself or make a little bit of extra money to underwrite that second home. So for me, like I'm thinking we're going to be able to do stuff like that a lot earlier in our life because we're learning these systems. I share with you, my uncle owns a house. My brother and sister-in-law, they also do that. And we had these really cool conversations about dreaming about where we want to own second properties. We could actually kind of see putting a chunk of money down and having that property not only pay for itself, but become a really good investment.
And it makes you think about differently about what you buy and where you buy it and what it looks like, because you're not just thinking about your own use, you're thinking about rentability, right?
Exactly. I think there might be some people in your audience that might be interested in just doing this even like once or twice a year. If you wanted to go to Italy for a couple weeks or long term, like if you live in a market where people want to go to and you want to leave for like Christmas or some holiday, it's like you could get several $1,000s for renting out your house one time and then go to, I mean, it might make a trip possible that you couldn't afford.
So now when someone's retired, who's a lot of this audience are thinking about it, travel, because that's always a big goal in retirement. One thing that they have going for them is the total flexibility, right? If they don't have a day job and a schedule, that they can respond to offers to rent their house pretty quickly if they're so inclined. Is that a big advantage in terms of renting out your house, is to be able to accept or reject offers fairly quickly based on the time of year and the demand?
Yeah, I think that's probably like one of the biggest advantages, because now you have the ability to choose whether or not you want to go someplace. Because I mean, if you're working a job and you got 3 weeks of vacation off a year, it's like you're only going to be able to like list those times as open. And so it's going to take a lot longer for you to get a couple of good recommendations. If you're basically location independent, or you can like take work with you, you got the ability to also find places that you love to go to. So when somebody requests it again, you're like, and I talked to my brother about this too, like you can use your primary residence almost like a make me move kind of scenario. Like, do I really want to go somewhere? Well, I would if I could get this amount of money. And so like, I know where you live, there might be some huge event. Like if they do the Super Bowl in where you live next year, it's like you might find this window where like everybody just wants to be in your community, and you're in a place where maybe people wouldn't rent as often, you know?
So if you're a little flexible, it's like as the offers come, you can say, wow, this offer's big enough, let's go someplace. And then you get creative about where you could go.
Yeah. And you, just like any business, you build clients in, like people want to come back. And if they take really great care of your house and you trust them and you know them, like they almost become like friends or acquaintances. There's a group of people, her name's Dorothy, but we're going back to Mexico in November, and she sent me a check last week. They're going to be here for 5 nights. It's $2,500 she sent me. And like they've rented our house for, this will be the 3rd Thanksgiving that they rent.
Wow.
Like, I would love to be at my house for Thanksgiving, but it's too good to be true, because we know the people, we like them, we trust them. We came back from Mexico and had a $25 bottle of wine on our kitchen table with the thank you note. And the people were just like so thankful that we opened up our house to them. They had an amazing experience. So there's also a reward. Like you feel like you're kind of giving back to other people. Like is you are offering a service that can make somebody's trip or vacation really awesome, you know?
That's a great point. So I want 2 things from you. I want, 1, some of the downsides that you've experienced. And then 2nd, what's the first step if you've never done it before?
Okay, so let me start with the down, and then I'll end with the good, or not the good, but the steps moving forward. Okay, so I would say that like you're running a business, and so you're not going to go on vacation for free. Like you're taking that awkward feeling that you have and like getting used to it and like warming up to the idea of sharing your personal space. So it's possible that little things can happen. You can take a security deposit, but things will also happen yourself at your own place. Like something will break. It's just inconvenient to like bring cleaners in your house, and like packing and going on vacation can be kind of stressful if you're taking flights anyway. So you gotta realize that it's going to take some muscle and it's going to take some time to learn the system of doing that. So I would probably say that's the worst thing. It's like starting a new business and like doing things you've never done before. It's just plain tough, and there's a learning curve. And I'll tell you, like, if you really want to do this with the new platforms that are available, you can make it happen, and it can be a great thing if you are willing to put the time in and work on it.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your story, man.
And then I will say, you asked, the other question was, what are the next steps? And I would say the next thing that I would do if I was thinking about it, I would go on VBRO or Airbnb, and I would just like look in your market, like what kind of properties are available and what people are doing. And then another thing is you can like look at these listings that are in your area and then go out like 3 and 4 months and see if there's dates blocked. And you can find the times of the year when maybe there's very high demand for them. That would be, I think, the next steps. And if you have a reluctant spouse, I think the way to deal with that is talk about what it makes possible. Talk like if your wife is not really open to doing this, but her dream is to like travel more, it's like there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Like it's like you got to earn more money or you got to do something to underwrite these trips. You know, the retirement answer man is not going to tell people to borrow on a credit card to go to Italy. So it's like you can make this happen, you know? And as one of my mentors always says, instead of having like one big conversation about it, you should probably have really small, little conversations.
That guy's an idiot because I've been married 28 years next month, and we just don't have conversations, and it works real well. Will you come down and talk to my wife?
All right. I won't tell Sean about that.
Yeah, don't tell her I said that. Please. All right, buddy. Good talking with you.
All right, thanks, Roger.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to be a little bit happier. So next week on the show, we're going to do something we've never done. We're going to have a special guest to hang out with us and answer some of your questions. Now, I get accused of always liking new things. Nicole gets on me about that all the time. But I do believe one thing that can help us live a happier life is being willing to blow up what is to start working towards what could be. Now, you got to do it prudently. But I think that's part of the attraction to travel and the attraction to doing things is so we continue to grow. So I want to challenge you. What in your life do you need to blow up and start working towards something a little bit cooler for you?
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment. I always feel like I have to talk fast because the race is off. So sorry. Welcome to the Smart Sprint segment, where we set a 7-day goal to take a little baby step to creating a better retirement. So if you're into this travel thing, and that's something that's important to you when you retire, and maybe now, I want to encourage you in the next 7 days to plan a weekend trip, maybe just for one night, and it could even be locally, but rather than stay in a hotel, go to Airbnb or one of those services and rent something. And while you're there, enjoy the unique experience, but also get an idea of how they structure it from the other side of the person actually renting it out to you, just to experiment with how this might be able to serve. So in the next 7 days, plan a weekend trip and try it out. So I was talking with a new client the other day who had been working with a financial advisor for a number of years, and they were helping them accumulate assets. And I asked them, well, why are you switching from this advisor that you've worked with for a period of time? And basically, here's what they said. They said, look, they helped us accumulate assets, but they hardly ever talked to us. And when they did, it was almost always about the markets. And we're at this point in our life when we're transitioning into retirement, and we don't want to mess this up. And we know that the markets are important, and we got to make sure that we get that down. But we also know there's a lot more to this retirement journey than just simply investing and how we're allocated. We want to make sure that's taken care of. And we want to make sure we have more frequent conversations so we can make lots of little adjustments along the way. And I think a lot of that is what it's about. It's how do you build a structure to have the conversations that matter so you can be successful in this retirement journey. So I'm currently accepting clients. If you would like to discuss and just have a chat about becoming a client, go to rogerwhitney.com and click on Work with Roger, and we can set up a time to talk. Hey, until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.